A good Shabbos. Today is Friday, obviously. Today we're learning the fifth Perek of Masechet Shabbos. Today's shir is sponsored Lila Nishmas Aaron Nachman ben Simcha Cohen, Yoshua Mordechai ben Shepsel, Baruch Asar Bashmol Leib, Moshe ben Yosef. May the Shamas all have an aliyah, and for Shlema for Ada Sar Bas Leach and Chana Pesel Bas Yenta Besoshar Chal Yisrael, and as a schus for Victor Aaron Ben Gittel Masha, the schus for him and his ganze mishpacha for Shefa Bracha V'Atzlacha. Okay, Perek Hey Mishnah Aleph. This is a short Perek today, only four Mishnayos, not as short as yesterday's, which was two Mishnayos, but it's a short Perek, not bad for Erev Shabbos. This Perek is talking about Shvisas Behema, about the different Yisurim with having an animal do work for you on Shabbos. Okay, so we're going to jump into Bameh Behema Yotza. This is Perek Hey Mishnah Aleph. Bameh Behema Yotza. What may an animal wear outside on Shabbos? Bameh Eni Yotza. And what may it not wear outside on Shabbos? So what type of equipment, what type of gear? Yotze Hagama Be'afsar. A camel can go out with a leash tied around its mouth, where it's circling the mouth, it's covering the mouth, where it keeps it where it keeps the animal under control, and the na'aka bechatam, and a white female camel with a nose ring. You know, they put the ring inside the nose in order to pull it. Because they do that. It says says Rashi, because it's harder to control a female camel than a male camel. Therefore, you put it in the nose rather than around the whole thing. And Viluvdukis Beprambia. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. A Libyan donkey can wear a bridle. Bridle goes around the whole. It's another contraption. I have a couple of pictures over here in the article. Yeah, this is the one where it's going around his like top to bottom over here, and this is the nose ring over here, and then this is the bridle where it goes around the whole head. Okay, the Suis Bashir and a horse with a collar. And all animals that wear a collar, such as dogs, they can go outside with the leash of the collar wrapped around their necks. If you look around, everyone who has a dog on Shabbos, as a dog, they walk their dog on Shabbos too, and the dog has a collar and a leash upon it. According to the Mishnah, that's perfectly fine. Or is being pulled by the leash of the collar. Each of those items are there to restrain the animal, and therefore it's not considered to be a burden. So the animal can go in Rosh Hashanah while wearing it. Now we're talking about, we're segueing out of Hilchos Shabbos into Tamei and Toher regarding collars, and since we talk about collars now, we're going to segue a little bit into collars regarding Tumah and Tara. Mazin aleim v'tovim b'koman. They may sprinkle mechatas from the paraduma on these collars and immerse them in a mikveh while they are still in their place on the animal's neck. Even though the items are for an animal are not makabel tumah, generally the collar on the animal is an exception because it's made for a person's benefit, and therefore it is makabel tumah. Generally, items for animals are not makabel tumah. Okay, Mishnah Beis. Chamor yotze b'mardas b'zman shehi keshualo. A donkey may go outside on Shabbos wearing a saddlecloth for warmth. The blanket, that coat that goes on the donkey, as long as it was tied to the donkey before Shabbos. Zecharim Yotzin Levuvin, rams can go outside with their private parts covered in a heart-shaped leather pouch. Rechelos Yotzos Shechuzos Kavulos V'Chavunos. Ewes, which are female sheep, they can go outside with their tails held up to expose their private parts, or with their tails tied down to cover them, or with their bodies covered in a garment to keep their wool clean. These are all mutter to do on Shabbos. So by the male, the pouch is a protective is to protect them from excessive mating, and therefore they can wear that on Shabbos. And the owner who got on the females, if the owner wants the female to reproduce more, then he ties the tail up so it's accessible. And if he wants it to reproduce less, then it ties the tail down so it's inaccessible. And okay, continuing on. Izim yotzes serurus. Goats may go outside with their teats wrapped tightly. That's where they're producing milk from, or loosely, depending on how much they want the milk to produce. Rabbi Yossi Omer B'chulan Chutz Min HaRechelin HaKovnos. Rabbi Yossi prohibits all these animals from going out in all these cases, except for the ewes that are covered in a garment to keep their wool clean. According to him, all the above items are considered burdens, tirchas, with the exception of a garment to keep them clean. Therefore, that's considered to be an article of clothing which can be worn on Shabbos, but everything else would be usher according to Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Izim Yotzes Ruas Liyavesh. Rabbi Yehuda says that goats may go outside with their teats wrapped rightly to dry them out, but not with a bag attached to them to catch their milk. That would be usher according to Rabbi Yehuda. Yeah. Okay. Mishnah Gimel. 2 more to go. So, what may an animal not wear outside? Lo Yitzie Gamal b'metutelis. A camel may not go outside with a tag tied to its tail, because it might fall off and be carried by a person in a Shusha Rabbim, and that's a problem. Lo Akav Lo Ragel. Normally, I go out with its 4 legs attached to its hind legs. You can't tie the front to the back, or with a leg tied in a bent position to keep it from running away, because these bindings cause the animal pain and therefore are considered tirchas. The same is true for all other animals. They may not go out wearing a tag or with their legs tied in these ways. So how can you lead camels on Shabbos? How is that possible? Well, you cannot tie camels together in a line and pull the one in front. That's usher because why? Because the person who's leading them appears to be taking them to be sold, which is prohibited on Shabbos. What other purpose is there to lead the whole line of camels? However, he may gather all the ropes together in his hand and pull them as a bunch. Provided that he does not wind the ropes of wool and linen together around his hand, because that would be a problem of shotness. Very cool. You can't tie them to your hand like this if they're made of wool and linen, but there wouldn't be an issue for Shabbos though. And finally, Mishnah Dalid. Ein chamor yotze b'merdas b'zman she'enu keshura lo. A donkey may not go outside on Shabbos wearing a saddlecloth. if it was not tied to the donkey before Shabbos. Why? Which we discussed beforehand. We discussed that before. That I mean, we didn't discuss it before, but it was mentioned in Mishnah Beis that donkeys tend to feel cold all the time. So they use a saddlecloth to keep them warm, and so since it's not since it's there for warmth, it is not considered to be a teicha, but rather a article of clothing. Nevertheless, a donkey can wear a saddlecloth on Shabbos only if it is tied on, but otherwise it might fall off and be a burden and be carried by a person. Dalet Amos Eresh Sarabim, which would be usher. Um, okay, so where were we? We were here. Hello, bezug, and and he cannot go out with a bell suspended from his neck. Ava pishu pakuk, even if it's stuffed with cloth to keep it from ringing, because ringing bells is obviously usher and Shabbos. Hello, besulam shibit savaro, nor with the ladder like brace on its neck to keep it from turning its head around and scratching itself. Nor with a protective strap on its leg. The ain hatar nagol and yosim b'chut and chickens may not go outside wearing strings for identification or straps on the legs to be restrained. It's also aser. Ve'en hazacharim yotzim b'agol shetachas ha'alya shalahen. And rams may not go outside with a miniature wagon under the tail, which protects the tail. Protects the tail from being damaged by rocks and stones on the ground. You would have like a little small wagon tied to the animal so that wouldn't get injured. Ve'ein haruchim yosef chanunos, and ewes may not go outside with chips of yachanun, wood, in their nose, which makes them sneeze. They would put a type of wood known as yachanun into the nostril to make it sneeze and thereby disengage all the worms that are in its head. Only the female sheep were treated in this way because the male sheep did not need this because they're constantly butting heads with each other, and all of the worms would then fall out when they butt their heads. But the females didn't do that. Finally, the ha'ego yotze begimon. A calf may not go outside with a yoke made of reeds, which is used to train it to bear a real yoke. Below para ba'or hakupad, and a cow may not go outside with porcupine hide on its udders to protect them from rodents, or with a strap stretched between its horns. And lastly, parasa shor ben azariah. Elazar ben Azariah, his cow would go out with a strap between its horns, because it was intended to be as a decoration. And according to Elazar ben Azariah, the decoration was not a burden because it was common for cows to wear them. But the Chachamim were against all this, and therefore it's a problem. Thank you for joining us. We'll continue Sunday morning at 10 o'clock with Perek. Have a wonderful Shabbos. Thank you for joining us.